Hey everybody, welcome to Peppermint Hugh's Queer 101 podcast, where we talk about how the queer past brought us to the queer present and beyond.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with everything that we're doing on the podcast.
And listen, that's really important because we want you to not only like, subscribe, also share this, and of course, keep along in the comments. And it costs you nothing, and it really does help our podcast grow. And you want us to grow.
Yeah, bring your friends. That makes the community better. It makes the conversation better. Get everyone you like reading the same books.
So today, a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about, speaking of books, a fabulous book called The Betrayal of Thomas True by author A.J. West.
I cannot wait to get to that, Pep. Wait. But before we get there, couple things we've got coming up that I'm also really excited about. That list we're making for the Transgender Day of Visibility at the end of March. Our favorite trans books, trans authors. If you've got things you want to add to it, please drop them in the comments. We're putting together a great list for you. We've also got a new Discord that just opened up. So if you're part of our book club through Alstora and you haven't checked it out yet, please sign on to the Alstora Discord so you can talk about our upcoming books, Fearless and Free, which we'll be doing in March, the memoir of the fabulous Josephine Baker, and then, one I'm really looking forward to, Harriet Tubman Live in Concert by none other than Bob the Drag Queen. I love Bob.
Oh.
I love Harriet Tubman, and I gotta ask, Pep, speaking of Bob, have you been watching The Traitors at all?
You know, I have been watching The Traitors, but I haven't been following along. I stopped watching after Bob got, I won't say exactly when, but I did stop watching at a certain point in relation to Bob. For those of you that, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody.
I don't want to spoil anything, but it was unfair.
It was quite unfair. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
Well, okay. If you're not watching The Traitors, is there anything that you're loving on TV right now?
Well, wait a minute. Have you been watching The Traitors?
Of course! I have to admit that I'm a reality TV junkie, but I don't particularly love the dating reality shows or the, ones where it's people hanging out. I like the competition reality shows. So, Survivor, Amazing Race, The Traitors, anything where it feels like people might, half starve to death and then stab each other at a tribal council.
And maybe have sex in the bushes or something.
That's in the After Dark part.
Yeah, it is. I mean, especially the British ones, the British version is definitely After Dark.
There are some things that happen in Big Brother that anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a reality TV junkie as well. I mean, I don't even know if I am. That's just the way things are going these days. Is reality TV is what most platforms are investing in, and so I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't watch any type of reality in any way, shape, or form. But I actually watch both. I watch the competition shows and the dating shows. Now, I don't watch every single one of them, but I do watch. I watch a lot of them. I like the ones that are not so vicious, the dating shows that aren't so vicious, and that's hard to come by. But what I'm currently watching now is a dating show. It's a Korean dating show called Singles Inferno. And it's the
dating
slowest.
In hell.
Korean, let me tell you, yeah, dating in hell. The Korean dating shows are absolutely, well, I think the Korean reality TV shows in general, they move at such a different pace. It's so wild. They make a 20-minute experience into a 1.5-hour episode. They repeat everything they say. So if they're like, oh my gosh, the tree just fell. That's what you see in the American version. Oh my God, the tree just fell. What do we do? Let's run. In the Korean version, it's like, oh my gosh, the tree just fell. Oh my gosh, the tree just fell. Oh my gosh, the tree just fell. Oh my gosh, the tree. It's like the same person saying the same thing over and over again from different angles. They really want to drive home that they noticed that the tree fell.
I was doing this pitch recently for a TV show, and they said to us they're really into shows now where people repeat everything so that if you're not looking and if you're only paying half attention, you'll hear it no matter what. So I think that's actually where all TV is supposedly going. Not just reality, but
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We're so distracted.
The funny thing is, we're distracted, but I actually watched something on the science of it. A lot of a lot of us actually watch. I thought I was unique in this. A lot of people do end up watching TV, like streaming TV, with especially new recordings with the subtitles on. And I thought it was just because I'm like, getting old. Apparently, it's the way that it's recorded. There's actually some science behind it. Sound technicians have analyzed old recordings, like old TV shows versus the stuff that's newer made. And this is also a reality in like pop music as well, where in the past, because of the recording technology, the voice the voice just did. There wasn't an option. Sit on top of everything. So the human voice was easier to hear over all the other instruments, all the other things that are happening, even when they're mixed in. Because a lot of times, in recording 101, they take different sounds and they mix them together and they like play with the volumes of everything so it sounds just right. But depending on what type of speaker you're listening to, it might sound right or wrong. So they mix things for like the lowest common denominator. And these days, in addition to that, they add all these extra like sound effects that like melt everything together. And it sounds great on like a professional recording like sound booth. But when you are just like listening on your like regular $20 headphones, well, these days they're not $20, let's be honest. When you're listening on your like household headphones or like your household TV, it's still not like they mix it for Dolby, and it's not really for that. And so then you end up not really being able to hear the voice, and so we use the subtitles a lot of people. So I think that is part of why we can't hear.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's like you've got to have like a subwoofer and a bass and like 6-point speakers at home to get anything like what it's supposed to sound like. Otherwise it's mumble, 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 mumble. And then the commercial is like people screaming at you.
Screaming! Well, there you have it. You can see it because commercials, obviously they record audio and it's obviously they spend less time on a commercial than they would like on a TV show. But the commercial, you must hear the voice in a commercial. If you don't, then there's no point. Yeah. And so you can tell that's what they're doing.
And I feel like they're becoming more and more like TikTok, RIP, every day. It's like the commercial jumps at you the second it starts, There's no like gentle lead in.
It's true, and I can tell Hugh that you don't have TikTok because TikTok is not gone.
I heard it was back after I heard it was dead, and then I was like, it's too confusing.
Slightly different.
Ooh.
It's confusing. Yeah, it's slightly different. It's still here.
Well, I may actually have, I may have to get on TikTok because I've got to tell you that my problem with watching TV right now is that I am having it is impossible to avoid hearing that crazy man in the White House's voice. And I swear to God, it actually makes me feel like I am losing my mind when I hear him talk. It's like the mouth of madness opens up and just vomits out on us.
Well, you better do what you're going to have to do because we're going to be hearing it for a while unless something happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The politics. Crossed. That's the thing. Politics and entertainment have... I do remember a day and age. I mean, when we'd be either watching something, an interview on TV, or even overhearing a conversation or involved in a conversation, and someone would say something about politics, and it wouldn't be very long before somebody would be like, let's not talk about politics. And there was actually an actual like intentional switch between politics and not politics, entertainment or whatever they were talking about. These days, it's virtually impossible. I think since 2016, I think Trump had a lot to do with that. I don't think it's possible to go one day without hearing or talking about the president and things that are related to what he says.
Yeah, I think about like all those like 70s feminists who taught us that the personal is political, and they are totally right. But I never thought about how that meant that everything, everywhere, all the time is now politics.
The time would be political.
Yeah, there's no escaping it.
Wild.
Have you heard about this new... Oh, wait, what is it called? Let me look at the title, get it right. Ending Radical Indoctrination in K through 12 Schooling Executive Order. It is just the grossest thing.
Yes.
It's so... I'm like... This idea that like education is now going to be... I mean, education's always political, right? But now it has to be patriotic. and we have to defend the children from learning about white supremacy and gender, as though these things are going to be more dangerous to them than the guns that I think all school children are now mandated to have, right? Isn't that part of the order too? Every child must have an AK-47 in school at all times. I think that's in there.
Essentially. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people that would make some money off of that. It is absolutely wild. And the notion as if American patriotism, if patriotic is about America, and we're talking about American patriotism, then it is quite appropriate for us to talk about white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because American patriotism and America, the United States of America, is literally built, like on by way of white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because if there hadn't been, the enslaved people would not have done all the stuff that they did, and we would not be where we are.
Yeah.
And so I just think that that's really rich and wild that they want us to have a revisionist history that's their version of patriotic. And it is interesting, and it is about shirking and escaping accountability, a lot of these new initiatives. And they tried just with sort of like individual bills and laws and policies and guidelines to end wokeness, but that wasn't necessarily a law until this administration, where they're basically saying, we'll threaten you. We're going to remove federal funding from any institution, any group, any organization, anything that receives any type of federal funding will be removed. The federal funding will be removed if you talk about or acknowledge or have any provisions that make any space for any of these ideas that are supportive of racial, like, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is what?
Yeah.
Like, it's
everything.
So vague.
They're going after everything.
It's
and it's
anything
that
isn't heterosexual, cisgender, and white. And
anything
Christian.
Trump doesn't like, basically. It's a government by, like, schoolyard bully. Either you do what we say or we're going to beat you up and take your lunch money. And that's it.
Yeah, and it's I hate to say it, but I mean I don't even hate to say it. I think it's just fair to say that, like, for those of us that it's very, very useful. I think it would be very useful, while we can search on the internet the things we want to search on the internet for the most part, for people to remind themselves and educate themselves. Let me just put it this way. I really didn't learn about fascism in any K through 12 at all. I did not learn about what fascism was. I didn't learn about, like, the sort of tenets of fascism, the components of fascism. I didn't really learn the components of, like, as an economic system, what communism is.
Yeah.
I just knew that it was bad. I heard that communism was bad, and that it just meant, I thought communism just meant a dictatorship. That's what I thought.
I had a social studies teacher in high school who literally said to us, the difference between communism and socialism is that communism is bad. That was it. End of discussion.
I'm surprised that they even said that socialism isn't bad.
It's true. Well, he didn't define socialism at all beyond that. That's all he knew. Communism was bad.
Because I think a few years after that, we're about the same age, communism and socialism became interchangeable. Yeah. I'd say, like, the late 90s, early 2000s, the notion of communism and socialism, I think, represent the same to the average American who's uninformed about what those things actually are.
Yeah.
And I was watching so much, so many videos that were interviewing certain people that are very conservative in terms of their voting records. And they, when asked what is communism, they would describe X, Y, and Z. They were literally describing capitalism. Do you know what I mean? Which is so wild. But the thing is, with fascism, what oftentimes comes through is this strict adherence to the binary. Fascism desperately needs fascism needs a hierarchy. Fascism and certain versions of fascism depend on an allegiance to the state, an allegiance to the country or the state, an allegiance to the systems that operate that the state has, and that everything is in control under there. Everyone has a place, and your place is either on this side or that side. You either male or female. You either, this or that, and that's it. And then everything has a very easy hierarchy, and the hierarchy is unbroken. It's a caste system that they utilize.
And it also requires that flipping around where the people on top say, oh, we're the oppressed, right? It's white men who are being oppressed. That's what fascism does. It says the ones in the most power, no. They're the ones who have been hurt.
We're being attacked. So we have to victimize we're being victimized, so we have to turn the victims into the perpetrators, which allows us to dehumanize them. And you can apply that to things in our history, things in our things in our present. And I was watching a march take place in Los Angeles today, which is a parade type march, a protest march. With red, and I could see, because I woke up blurry eyes, red, green, and white in the flags, and I was like, oh no, this is okay. The camera had, when I tell you, must have been the entire police force of Los Angeles, at least 70 cars ready to drive over those protesters on the highway, because it was the protesters versus the police cars. And I was like, oh gosh, is this an anti-war protest? That's what I think this is a anti-war protest that have some Palestinian flags and things in it. And it wasn't.
What was it?
This was people marching with Mexican flags against the immigration policies.
Oh.
And they were met with the same exact type of force that they've been meeting the anti-war protests with, which is basically, they basically said it's now, they're making it a crime to protest, even though that is a part of our First Amendment rights. And so it's so wild to me, because I think that actually, in reading Thomas True, The Betrayal of Thomas True, that actually lines up with a lot of that. It's not explained and laid out, so bare, but at the day and age, and we can talk more with AJ about this, the time that that this takes place, it feels they're obviously under the monarchy. It feels the same thing, obviously feudalism and like these systems of control. And so it's how people how people dress, how people speak is very, very closely monitored in the book, and heavily controlled in the book. And going outside of the lines is not allowed. Like, men dressing as women is like, it's a crime alone for them to dress as women, let alone be gay. And it's almost implied that you're just breaking all of the social norms anyway, and that the punishment for that is being beaten up or murdered. And everyone around in the book actually supports that, in the story supports that. The average people around town, even if they're not the perpetrator. Of course, some thug who's like homophobic would come up and try to hit you, but like, you can see the reactions of the people around them in a lot of these situations that happen in the book. And the lady watching on the stoop is like, get him, because he's dressed in it, and it's wild.
I think you're actually right. It's like, we think there's progress and it's always kind of shooting upwards, right? But it's at best spiraling, and we are in the same shit. You look at the queer past enough and you will see that the same things that are happening right now were happening 100 years ago and 400 years ago, and will probably happen in some new form 100 years in the future. And it's crazy. And that's actually, I agree. I think that is one of the most interesting things about The Betrayal of Thomas True. And for those of you who have not yet read the book, if you're tuning in or you're not yet a member of our Alstora book club and you're hopping over to join, let us tell you a little bit about this. The Betrayal of Thomas True is a thriller set among queer sex workers in 17th century London. And yes, there were queer sex workers in 17th century London. Someone is killing mollies, as they're called, and the newcomer, Thomas True, is being set up to take the fall for it. In London, he finds the promise of possibility of true love and true friendship, but only if Thomas True survives the moralizing magistrates and their murderous spies. I like to think it's a little bit like you and me trying to make it through the world of queer books today, avoiding Trump and all of his assholes that are out there trying to ban these books. And I think it's a really fun, weird, exciting, unexpected. I really enjoyed this one as a way to both think about what's happening today and a little bit of escapism from what's happening in the world today. I don't know about you, Pep.
I mean, it's so descriptive and so colorful. I felt like I was transported to London, and I felt like I was watching a movie, but I mean, I was definitely more immersed than that. And that's one of the things that's really interesting. Our book club, we, highlight and feature all types of stories and all types of books, memoirs and historical accounts and things. And this is an historical account because it's way back in the day, but it is really interesting to hear this story unfold and to sort of follow along. The biggest takeaway that I have one of the biggest takeaways that I have from this book is the way things smelled. I don't know if that was so descriptive, and like my stomach almost turned a few times reading the book, but only because of the smell that was ensued. But but moreover, some of the quotes and the way that our author AJ West writes is so British.
Oh yeah.
And so like I don't know. I want to hear more from him on like how he created this, but
he'll read you for 17th century filth. That's what I think. 17th century stinky London filth.
And that's exactly. It's evident in some of these quotes. Okay. So here's one of my favorite quotes. They're talking about one of the gals, and it says, "Jackie has a pretty face for all them freckles, but my legs are the longest in London." Fump laughed, nudging Verity. "Long and spindly and as Cain's dear. If she stands over long in the nursery gardens, slugs climb up them britches and slugs climb up them britches looking for runner beans." What are runner beans?
I don't even. But imagine slugs climbing up your britches. Right? That's disgusting.
Yeah. Oh wait, and there's a bonus one. "Your face is as wrinkly as a dried plum, and your plums are as dusty as walnuts." Darling, that is a read.
Woo. You were talking about gross smells. We're also getting gross foods, gross creatures, It's just a lot of grossness. I love it.
It was nasty back then, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's not only like physically gross, which you're right, and that is so like the smells and the sights are nasty, but it's psychologically gross too. I mean, it's a little more. It's just as brutal as today, like we were talking about, but it's a little more on the surface. So my favorite quote actually was talking about the folks in the book who are like the moms of liberty of the 17th century, the Society for the Reformation of Morals, and they say about them, "It's a gang of bloodthirsty murderers by another name. Gentlemen, ladies of fine morals, a glorious institution, loved by the king himself, all of them hell-bent on hunting us sinners down, stringing up the likes of us while they romp with whores and steal and kill and covet like the good book tells them to." Which, frankly, I think that could be a description of, like, Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene or 95% of the Republican Party these days.
100%, but with less panache and less pizzazz and less style.
Yeah,
dare I say?
They do not wear good outfits, and in this book, there's a lot of good outfits, even among the evil people. There's a lot of
there really are
and tunics and wigs and
the britches. The
britches. I'm
Everybody
all about
wearing
the
their britches, honey. I'm gonna go back, and I mean, I dig this because I actually use quite classic language when talking about clothing. Like I still refer to it as a brassiere, and I refer to bloomers all the time. That's separate than underwear, but I do talk about like bloomers like as a specific. I recognize the importance of and the existence and the importance of bloomers. And a lot of people look at me like, "What the hell? Did you just beam to us from 1920?" So
I learned a new word for wig in this book, which we'll have to ask AJ about it because I didn't know how to pronounce it. Peruke? I've never heard that word before.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that either. I'd never heard that, but hello. There's so much we got to talk about. And I'm so glad that we have all these fabulous quotes. Listen, y'all. This book is fantastic, and I love the idea of a queer, of quite adult, and very sexy and very graphic queer murder mystery novel. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, great way into history.
We every single, for those of you that are just watching now, every single month we have a fabulous conversation. We choose a book and we have a great conversation with our author, and this month is no exception. And so the author of the book, AJ West, we join him in conversation and a fabulous interview over on Alstora, but we have a clip for you right now. Check it out. Hi, darling.
Welcome.
That's the most English hello you've ever had. I just suddenly thought my energy levels are like a British level. I need to raise at least 40%.
You know, are we like really animated? Like, oh, welcome to the show.
Is that how Americans feel to you at all times? Like 40% more like crazy?
Yeah, I need to take more vitamins.
Is vitamins how you say cocaine in British?
Yes.
I was being very sensible. I was being very good, but I can tell this is going to.
Oh no, this is the naughty interview.
Yeah.
Well, look, we've already done a little introduction for you for the podcast, but come on, tell us a little more. Tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself to our listeners. We know you, but who are you?
Well, I was a really shy kid at school, and I had very few friends, and was really kind of nervous and didn't really know why I didn't fit in. But it turns out it's a very kind of boysy class, very macho class. If you weren't good at football or soccer as you could, then that was the only currency of popularity in my class at school. And so I was a bit of an odd one out, and I used to read books, and it used to kind of keep me company, and I used to go on adventures in my imagination. And so I guess I found my love of books and literature and stories really early on, but I was always too scared to try and be a novelist because I was frightened of failing. You know, if you care about something, I don't know about you guys, but you've been in the situation, like you care about something so much that you don't try, because to fail at it would be the most painful thing you could ever possibly imagine. So I went into journalism, which was, I mean, it was tough. I wasn't very good at it. No, that's not true. I was
all the tea coming out.
I was good at it in the way that I loved meeting people and talking to them and finding out what was really going on. But I wasn't very good. I got very anxious about it. I had like terrible panic attacks, and I ended up reading the TV news on the BBC, and people would have no idea, but behind the scenes, like, I'm sweating, my heart's going, I'm struggling to breathe, I can't think, and I'm just on autopilot trying to read this news bulletin because I couldn't. My brain just wasn't great at being under pressure all the time, every day, deadline. And so I ended up kind of having a bit of a crash and burn moment and got sacked by the BBC, which is not easily done.
Oh my God.
Trust me. It's like...
Yeah, I think you have to be trans generally to be sacked by the BBC.
Oh,
these
yeah,
days.
that's for sure, at least.
Well, while I was there, I saw from the inside out that there were some really amazing people doing incredible things for diversity and giving voice to people who, are underrepresented. But there were also people in positions of influence who were homophobic and transphobic and, various other things as well mixed in for good measure. And so, that was tough. But it's such a big organisation. But they ended up nominating a guy who's a famous boxer in the UK, maybe worldwide, Tyson Fury, who had been recorded saying things that he's since, I think, tried to explain and retract, but that were kind of talking about gay people and being false in the same breath, and was making comments that I felt were quite misogynistic and various different things. He has his own things to say about that at the time. That's how I felt. I just put up on my Facebook that I had an issue with it before I know it. I was sacked from the BBC, and then ended up on Big Brother in the UK. And that kind of threw my...
That's around the time we met.
Well, I was going to say, because that's how I met Peppermint, because through my kind of Z-list celebrity status, I managed to meet some A-list celebrities. I just found my way into the green roots of things.
You and me have so much in common. I feel like I'm riding both your coattails now.
Well, the funniest thing about it was, I don't know if you even know this, Pep, but when my agent said, "Oh, this newspaper, they'd like to go and interview some drag queens off this thing called RuPaul." And when I met you, and I also met Jinx around the same time, and Katya, in like this kind of event in London. I'd never watched RuPaul's Drag Race. I had
Living under a rock?
I had no idea. I knew that. I just knew I was interviewing these kind of fabulous, wonderful characters, these incredible comedic. I had a great time. But I was having to totally kind of pretend. Because I was going through, my excuse is I was going through a really rough period. I was basically hopeless. I had lost a long-term relationship. I didn't know who my friends were. I found myself in this weird world where you're kind of quasi-well-known, but you're not important enough to be considered a celebrity or famous or anything. And then you jealousies and things, and you lose friends. So I was in a dark place. I wasn't watching television at that time. So,
Wow.
You know what? A lot of I didn't watch much Drag Race either. And to be fair, it wasn't on in the UK. I remember people had to get a VPN or do all the, not even, I don't even know if they had VPNs like that, but they were doing all kinds of illegal stuff to watch the American version back. And that was a long time ago. So, you're excused.
But hey, and then I had that crazy thing where you're retrospectively starstruck. So I then watched when the series were available more widely in the UK. I was then watching them from series 1. I got to Pep's season. I had to keep watching my own YouTube interview back with you going, "Oh my God." So many questions. I didn't even think to ask. I was like, "So what do you think of London? And why we're here in the market? Do you want to buy anything?" It was the thing.
Oh my God.
Oh,
wow.
Baby. Okay, well, you have a very rich personal history, both with myself and with Drag Race. So how did that lead you to write The Betrayal of Thomas True?
Well, so I ended up in a position where I really felt like I had nothing. I lost my career. Like I said, I lost my relationship. I lost everything. I had no money, no income. And I was at that point where I just thought, well, I have nothing to lose now. I might as well actually do the thing that scares me most in the world, which is write. And it turned out that there was a guy who worked at one of the big publishing houses. This is going to sound like nepotism, it's not going there. Don't worry, you don't Roger Ryan.
Sure.
It turned out that my mom actually owned Penguins. So I just did that. I went on the same thing. No, I went for a drink with a guy who worked at a big publishing house, but he had watched Big Brother, and he said he wanted to know the gossip about what it was really like. And I said, well, I will, but I also want to know the gossip of what publishing is really like. And he advised me not to write about the Mollies and the Molly houses, about queer history in London, because he said, and he was a queer guy himself, he said, you will be pigeonholed. That's a US term as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone will just say, oh, you're a queer author. They'll put you on the queer shelf at the back of the shop, and you won't get any more deals, and you won't sell any books. And so I kind of was sad about that, because I found out about the Mollies maybe 10 years earlier when I was working at a radio station, and it was the book that I wanted to write. As it turned out, I had another story that I found, which ended up being my first novel, The Spirit Engineer, which is based on the true story of a spiritual medium investigator in Belfast in the early 1900s after the Titanic sank.
You are a murder mystery person.
Yeah.
I'd be a very good murderer if I had the balls. Luckily for the world,
do the things that scare you.
Oh no!
If you care. No, I'm not advocating murder, to be clear to anyone listening to this podcast. Only on the page. Only on the page. So, let's talk about this, because you've talked a little bit about your interest in history. We've jumped time periods, places, everything. You've talked about the Mollies. And I think a lot of our listeners probably don't know about what a Molly is, or really a lot about the 1715s in London. So, this is all based on very real history. Can you tell us what you pulled from things that you researched and what you invented? What you wanted to take from the world of 1715 queer life?
Oh, there's so much there. That's the scary thing as a novelist. You think I would have put all of this in. You know, the story of Thomas True is, I like to think, a really exciting, thrilling love story with a mystery at its heart. Gabriel and Thomas are both Mollies. They meet each other. They like each other a lot. But they're too kind of shy they're too shy to tell each other. I'll get to that. But they have to uncover a rat who's amongst them, who's giving the names of Mollies away. But the point of this is that it's set in Mother Clap's Molly house, and that actually really happened. A lot of what's in the book really happened in real life. So if you go back to the early 1700s, you had a Molly house, and Molly is from the Latin mollis, which means soft. And Molly was a term used for gay men, or queer men back in the 1700s. It was kind of a slur, but it was also used by Mollies themselves. And they would be working class men. So if you're a wealthy guy, you didn't need to go to a Molly house and be a Molly necessarily. You could do it in your own house with your servants. But if you're a working class guy, so a butcher, a baker, a pie man, a chairman, you know, if you're a carpenter or something like that, you would then go to one of these secret places like Mother Clap's Molly house, which was the best known one at the time. And you would sing or dance, drink, and fuck with other guys, other Mollies. And you would quite often dress up in women's clothing, and you'd wear makeup, and you would give each other women's kind of nicknames at the time. And it's difficult for me to talk about it using the language I would use today for people then, you know. So we might go back in time and we might meet them and come to an understanding that some of these Mollies were trans or non-binary, or they were gay guys, but they were, you know, they were like drag queens, or maybe they were just gay guys who wanted to fit in, and it was a different thing you had to do. Within that group of people, you had every different identity by modern standards, but back then you were a Molly, and it wasn't the same. This is the thing, right, that's so difficult for people today to, I think, get their heads around, is that the idea of sexuality, particularly, was not defined in the way it is now. You can even go back to the early 1900s, and the idea that you were either this sexuality or that sexuality was not actually normalized. It was not unusual for a man who was accepted as a heterosexual man to have had experiences with other men. Whereas now it's very much your experiences are this, and your tastes are that. So therefore you are gay, or you're bisexual, or you're straight, or you're pansexual, or you're one or the other. That language still exists. So if you go all the way back to the 1700s, who knows how they would have described themselves, but they called themselves Mollies. And so when I've written my story based on that, I've tried to just allow them to speak through their own voices, and we can come to our own conclusions.
Oh, wasn't that great?
Oh, he's so fun.
He's so funny. He's funny.
Yeah, he really is. That was just a bit of the conversation. So if you loved that, which of course you did, hop on over to Alstora, join us, catch the full interview, join the Alstora Discord where you'll be able to chat with each other, ask questions, send us some questions for AJ. He might even hop in if y'all are good and answer some himself. So thank you, AJ. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Pep.
Yeah. All right. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this. Remember, it costs you nothing. Click that notification bell so you can see our next video. And we will see, for those of you that are members, we will see you over on Alstora. And for our next episode of our podcast, we will see you in the next video.
See you in March.